Greetings, fellow scribes! Welcome back to the archive. Today's discussion is on the RPG Kult Divinity Lost. This is the 4th edition of the Kult RPG system. The first edition was published in Sweden in 1991. The system has gone through its changes over the years. The current edition is using the Apocalypse World system with some changes, and from what I understand has gone back more towards the focus on the original setting material. The system has had a controversy over the years. I'm planning to talk a little bit about that, and a bit about the core setting of the world. I'm not really going to talk about the rules, more because those aren't really important to me for understanding a system. System is more about supporting the setting, and the setting for Kult is what's really, really interesting about it. So sit back and enjoy this discussion. I look forward to hearing from you afterwards. So before we begin, a bit of full disclosure. Kult Divinity Lost is my first experience with the Kult RPG setting. I'd heard about it over the years, but I'd never actually been able to find it. It's one of those settings and systems that it's really hard for people to carry in certain regions of the US. And unfortunately, I live in one of those. So, any discussion on this is going to be based almost exclusively on the current edition. So, I've gotten that out of the way. Let's go on in without any further delays. The Kult setting is based on a core concept that once upon a time in the ancient past, humanity were gods. Everything lived at our whim. And some entities became jealous of humanity, and a being called the Demiurge brought humanity down, trapped us in this illusion, this lie that we are in, stripped us of our powers, stripped us of everything that made us what we were, and everything around us is geared towards maintaining this illusion, this lie, keeping us, our jailers, in our own prison. The way they do this is really interesting. The Demiurge had a number of underlings called Archons, and each of the Archons focused around a core principle. These principles can be things like hierarchy, how, everyone above us helps keep us down. It can be religion, it can be money. Everything focuses on keeping us in our space, in our place. And from there, you have the opposite of the Demiurge and his Archons. But they weren't a major factor until sometime in the 1800s. In the 1800s, the Demiurge vanished. And no one knows what happened. Some say the Demiurge is dead. Some say the Demiurge is just going off somewhere. It doesn't really matter. One of the demiurges archons rebelled, killed at least one other archon. There's another couple archons that are missing. And this broke portions of the lie. And this also ended up freeing the Archon's dark mirror, Ashtaroth, and his Death Angels. The Death Angels are just like the Archons, though they're the dark reflections. And their principles also keep humanity trapped in the lie. And the core issue here is that with these two forces struggling now, the surviving Archons and the Death Angels, the lie is easier now to break through. Most people, the vast majority of the world, are still comfortably trapped in the illusion of day-to-day life. You, as players, are playing those who have the ability to see through cracks in the lie, see through cracks in the facade, and see what's really going on. And that's where things are interesting in terms of the core conflict. Because this isn't a game where you are heroes trying to save the world or such. It's your people who are more trying to keep stuff from the other side from messing too much with the comfortable masses of humanity, while you are trying to understand what you are seeing. This is a different kind of idea. We would see concepts similar to this in later role-playing games, most especially Mage the Ascension, but the actual focus, the actual reasons for this in Kult Divinity Lost are what makes it such a different game. Kult is not a setting or system for everyone. While as a horror game it is expectedly dark, the fact is horror games are themselves a bit of a niche market in RPGs, because, most people, when they think of horror, think of Jason and Freddy, and what the real horror RPGs are games of psychological terror. And then you have Kult. Kult takes the psychological terror aspect of horror and ratchets it up. It goes into areas that many people, most people, would find uncomfortable. Sexuality, sexual violence, torture, abuse of authority, manipulation, psychological and mental abuse. These are all part of the Kult setting. Because these are all things that the Archons and the Death Angels use to keep humanity in line, to keep humanity trapped in the lie. And so addressing these issues is considered part of facing and confronting the lie. At the same time, you're dealing with a game that is unapologetic about these things are part of the world and is not going to shy away from making them topics. This is why they have the concept called the horror contract. What this basically is the players discuss ahead of the game what they absolutely, positively do not want to deal with. And then you have to deal with the fact that you're talking about a system that in the game mastering section talks about using hand signals or safe words for the players if things are getting too uncomfortable for them. This is, like I said, not a game for everyone. And that's not a bad thing. The reason why this is not a bad thing goes back into what was happening in Sweden when the game was released. There was a lot of issues in that 1991 to 95 era. There was at least one murder in Sweden where the murderers actually credited Kult. There were a number of disappearances that were linked with Kult because the people who vanished were active players of the game. This, as I understand it, led them to adjust setting over the additions to make it softer. Kult Divinity Lost went back to the original. But something to think about with the controversy about Kult in Sweden is how closely it mirrors the Satanic Panic's direction at Dungeons and Dragons. And there's no telling really how much of the instances in Sweden were linked to the game and how many were linked to people just not being able to handle on a psychological level the game or just real life in general. So we don't really know any of the details on these like we in America do on all these Satanic Panic cases, where we know in most of those cases it was just someone who was a little off in the head already running into things. So the game kind of had to soften things for a while. And now it's back. And it really is not a game for everyone. Seriously, if there are topics that make you feel uncomfortable, understand a GM will probably be touching on those. And you need to be prepared for that. So the game is really, really dark. In fact, I can't show as many pictures as I would like, because taking pictures from many of the art is really, really hard, because it is very adult in nature. And no, I'm not just referring to nudity. I would feel uncomfortable describing some of the art in the book, is how unsettling it can be. And that helps tie into the setting, because the setting itself is meant to be uncomfortable, because you can't deal with horror if you are feeling safe and secure. But let's go into a little bit more into the setting itself. The cosmos of Kult is divided into several key regions. Where we are, this world that we see around us when we look around, this prison that keeps us shackled to it, is called Elysium. Directly above Elysium is Metropolis. This is the primal city, the essence of the city, the platonic form of the city. This is where once humanity dwelt and ruled the world. This now is where the Demiurge lived, where the surviving Archons dwell in their great towers. This is a city of towering skyscrapers and steel gray skies. New York is the closest thing you will see to this on Earth, and even it falls short of glory. Metropolis really is what every city aspires to be, but will never achieve. Below Elysium is Inferno. Yes, this is of course where Astaroth and the Death Angels rule. This is hell. This is many, many personal hells. For anyone who falls into here will find tortures specifically tailored for them if they get caught. And from these two, the main structures of the world, you can look at it as Metropolis is what every city aspires to be. Inferno is what every city fears becoming. And then we've got, in addition to those two, we've got the dream world, which is the realm of dreams and nightmares. And there are entities in there that cross into our world, that cross into Elysium. But that's not that common. Then we have the primal wild, the primal nature, Gaia. Now, those who grew up in the 90s know this is not a sweet environmentalist's dream. No. This is nature red in tooth and claw. This is the primeval wild. This is everything dark and beautiful of nature. This is Yellowstone, Yosemite, Glacier Lake. But this is also the tiger killing the humans. This is the man-eating hyenas. The lions taking down the gazelle. This is everything about nature, but ramped up. And as a human, you do not want to go into any of these places. Guess what? As part of the setting, you will eventually end up in these places. Or dealing with entities from these places. And that's kind of where some of the bits of horror come in, because you're dealing with stuff that does not belong in this world. Not just stuff that is inimically hostile to humans. It's not really. Well, in most cases. Okay, actually it is inimically hostile to humans. But at the same time, you're dealing with a setting where this is what you have to deal with. Where part of the lie is keeping humans prisoners, but another part of the lie is that it is keeping those things that would react to humans like slaves rebelling against their masters from finding us. Because many of these entities remember when humanity kept them slaves. And that is the world you deal with in Kult Divinity Lost. I know I said I was not going to talk about the system, but there are a few things about the system I really do need to mention. One of these is that the GM does not make any rolls. The GM tells the players what to roll. So, the GM does not, roll to see if a monster attacks. He tells the player to resist injury. Another interesting element that was actually shown in one of the examples of play is the GM can outright say things happen. The example they gave was they were dealing with creatures in a hallway, and one of the players had a sawed-off shotgun. The GM was not making him roll to attack. He was just going, oh, you have a sawed-off shotgun? You take one of these things down. Because, it makes sense. You're not going to miss with a sawed-off shotgun in a hallway. So don't make the player roll. And that's an interesting element as well. That the GM can actually just say outright that the players succeed in combat situations. Because the game system puts a stronger emphasis on keeping the action moving. not stopping and bogging things down in endless series of rolls. If you're going to do something, the GM will tell you what to roll, or the GM will just say, this is what happens. And this is great. To me, this is novel for a system. And I would like to see this system handled on other settings. So I might have to actually look into the Apocalypse World system just to see how flexible it is in general. But I do like how the choice for this system works well for Kult. And that is really all I have to say about Kult. If you like this video, please click like and subscribe below. I will be posting links to 2 good reviews of Kult Divinity Lost in the description below. So please feel free to click on those to find out more. I will also be posting a link to the Wikipedia page on Kult, which spoke a little bit more in depth about the instances mentioned earlier. So, I look forward to seeing you all next week. I plan to start a series of videos discussing Legend of the Five Rings. So, have fun, keep gaming.